So we're going to talk about several things that contributed to the American Revolution. And if I asked you to list and discuss some of the key causes of the American Revolution, you would be able to do that, right, Maria? Because cause and effect. The effect is what? We're talking about what today?
The French and Indian War. No, not the war. Wait, no, I got confused.
The what, Natea?
Causes of the American.
The American Revolution. So we know the American Revolution occurs, right, Maggie? Right? But you're like, why? Why did we go to war with England? Why? I want to cover that today. So the first person I want you to know is the Patriots, because the Patriots, yes, they are part of the war. They're the people that fight the war against England. But what drove them to rebel, right? What drove them to rebel? Kind of like Casey, your volleyball team. You're a player on the team, but you didn't win the game by yourself, did you? You contributed to the victory, right? You did certain things to help the team win. The Patriots, they weren't just a bunch of people that just did something. They worked together. There was something that drove them to rebel, okay? Now the Loyalists were the ones that did not want to fight the British government. They were, if you look at what is the root word there? Loyal. 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 And then you've got your neutralists. If you're writing way too much down, okay? Just colonists loyal to Britain.
I said they didn't want to fight the British.
Huh?
I said they didn't.
Yeah, or they didn't want to fight the British. And they have reasons behind that. We'll get into those reasons. Okay, people didn't just wake up and say, well, I love Britain, I'm going to support Britain. Or I hate Britain, I want to fight Britain. There's reasons. Remember the WIFM? I told you about the WIFM the other day?
Yeah.
What's the WIFM?
Oh, what's in it for me?
Yes,
Yeah.
the WIFM. Guess what? All these parties have a WIFM. What's in it for me? Now the neutralists, what's the root word there?
Neutral.
Neutral. What does that mean? Does anybody know what neutral means? Serenity.
It means they didn't fight for either side, they didn't help them.
You got the one side, you got the other side. Where are the neutral guys? Right in the middle, right? Yeah. They did not support either side. They thought both groups had good reasons, but neither were strong enough to fight a war over. Okay, this could be the folks that lived out in the frontier. Maybe they weren't interested. Okay? So the first group were who? The New England Patriots, right. The second group were who?
Loyalists.
And who's this third group?
Neutralists.
Very good. So we now know there's three parties involved in this potential conflict. Zeke.
I have a. All you have to put for this one is did not support either side.
Yep. Yeah. You're finding ways to paraphrase what you're seeing, okay? Now, I can. This is an I can statement. I can identify the proclamation of 1763 and explain why it caused conflict between the colonists and the British. You don't need to write this down. You don't need to write the I can statement down. The I can statement is your ability, my observable evidence that I can see that you understand the proclamation of 1763. Do you understand what I'm saying? Observable evidence, okay? Josiah, I'm related to you, or no, matter of fact, I live down the road from you, and you come to me and say, hey, Mr. Hall, can I cut your grass for 20 bucks? And I say, okay. What's the observable evidence? Maybe seeing the grass cut?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You want to be able to see it. So my observable evidence for you guys is you can tell me why it caused conflict. So let's talk about it. You've seen this map before. What is this right here? What are these?
That's the line.
No, what are these little...
Colonies.
The what?
13 colonies.
13 colonies. Very good. Now, on the heels of the French and Indian War, I told you that the British had amounted a great deal of what?
Money. Pounds.
And no, but you're not. They didn't make money off the war. They owed
Money.
They were in debt, right?
Yeah.
133 million pounds of debt. Well, in order to keep them from having a future skirmish and fight with French or British, most of the French had pulled out of North America. I'm sure they all did, and some just stayed and became part of the colonies. But they drew the line down the crest of the Appalachian Mountains. That was that proclamation of 1763. Now tell me, raise your hand if you know why we fought the French and Indian War.
Oh.
You know. Serenity.
It's because of fur, land, and...
Land. Where was that piece of land? The what river valley?
Ohio.
Ohio River Valley. So, if the Ohio River Valley is right here, we fight this war, the king now says, well, we can't go there. Could you see why that would be upset?
Yeah.
Okay? If I was your parent or guardian and I said, if you get all A's, you can go to the movie every Friday. Every Friday I'll pay for you to go to the movies next quarter, right? I'm your parent or guardian. And you bring home all A's on the report card, and then I tell you you can't go to the movies, are you going to be upset?
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, truth be told, the effort's yours alone, and if you got A's, it's only going to benefit you in the long run. But you were trying to get those A's because you wanted the right to go to the movies, right? Well, the colonists wanted to head west. They fought, and then the king said no. So the views of the proclamation of 1763. Points of view. We talked about points of view, right? When we did that literature piece. That was an introduction to points of view. What do you think? What do you think? Whose point of view do you think we're going to talk about? Nick. Whose point of view? The colonists. But which group of people? The Patriots? Natea. The Loyalists, and who else? Yeah, because they're the ones that are looking at this and going, because again, with them, right? With them, what's in it for me? So the Loyalists, defending the frontier, it's too expensive. Colonists would have to pay for troops. Okay? You follow me, Mackay? Too expensive. All right, let's talk about Prescott Valley real quick. Have any of you tried to do fundraisers in Prescott Valley? For a school? Have you ever tried to do a fundraiser for a school?
Football.
And how did that work out, Maggie?
It's actually really good.
Okay. Well, then that debunks my theory.
No.
Well, I want to show you something.
Mine
Something
was-
that I've noticed in Prescott Valley is we have a much older population in Prescott Valley. A lot of people come here and retire and hang out. And if you go and you try to do school bonds or raise money for the public education system, there's a lot of folks that don't want to contribute because they don't have any kids in the school district. They're just people that ended up retiring in Arizona. They like the weather, they like the land, they like what they can do, lots of thrift shops, it's cool, but they don't see the benefit of it, okay? Loyalists, same thing. Do you understand how I'm connecting the dots there? There's no benefit. The WIFM, what's in it for me? Everybody got that? Okay. The Patriots, tyranny! The land was already settled, and it was the only place where farmers could get new, cheap land. Okay? They had a WIFM. There was a reason they wanted to be there. They weren't just doing it for fun. Right, Gavin? They wanted growth. They wanted economic freedom. It was going to be a good thing. So they thought the crown was being tyrannical. So what happened? The colonists ignored the new law. You remember the video we watched the other day? Where the crown imposed the proclamation, the line? The colonists just said, whatever, we're going to go anyway. We're going to keep cruising out, okay? Remember that? So the colonists ignored the law and stayed put or continued to migrate past the mountains. Well, the British Army sent 7,500 men to keep the peace on the frontier. Alright, that caused tension. Anytime you put uniformed, armed soldiers among the population, there's going to be conflict, okay? Because if you were coming to school and going to Fry's and going to Walmart and going to the skate park and doing what you wanted to do, and you saw armed soldiers with weapons in camouflage utilities, don't you think that would be intimidating?
Yeah.
Okay? Don't you think that these armed soldiers eventually would start to impose their power and feel almighty and powerful and start to bully you guys and think, you know, well, you had to do this, you had to do that, you have to help pay for their food, you have to help pay for their where they're going to stay. There's several issues that erupt from the Crown having troops on the ground in North America. Yes?
Isn't that what the colonists had to do? Like the British soldiers would have to like live in their houses. And
Yeah, we're going to get to that. Quartering, and that's why we have the right Fourth Amendment, I think. Okay. The next I can statement is I want you to tell me about the Stamp Act. You should be able to tell me about the Stamp Act and why it caused conflict between the colonists and the British. Okay? You're like, the Stamp Act? I don't get it. What's the Stamp Act? Okay? The Stamp Act, remember, war debt. The British amounted $133 million worth of debt because of the French and Indian War. Well, what happened was they wanted the colonists to pay for the war. After all, it was in their colonies, right?
Wait, how much money?
You don't have to write it. It's 133 million pounds. I already told you that. You've heard that before. I'm not going to ask you the exact quantity of money. You need to know there was debt, and debt has to be paid. Just like we decide we pay taxes to keep the government running. But we also continue to build up debt as a nation, and we haven't figured our way out of that. We always talk about balancing the budget, but it's just we raise the debt ceiling all the time. The law required all colonists to buy a stamp for every piece of paper they used. Okay, so if you wanted to get married, there was a tax on that. Okay? You wanted to buy a newspaper, there was a tax on that. Okay? Anything you bought had an additional tax. Wills, licenses, playing cards, newspapers, etc. Alright? I'll tell you, actually funny, when I lived in Puerto Rico, I shipped my truck to Puerto Rico, okay, when I moved down there. And you know how you register your cars here?
Yeah.
Okay, it's by weight, you pay a certain amount. That's like a tax, okay, it's a highway tax when you register. Well, I'll tell you, when you go, I cannot remember the name of it, in Puerto Rico, when you go to register your car there, your truck, I had an F-150, so it was a bigger car for Puerto Rico, they got a lot of small cars there. I had to buy the stamp for my registration to use it down there and get my license plates. And it was expensive. So it's something very similar to what we have today, okay? It's very similar to what we have today. But wills, license, playing cards, newspaper, anything that was made on paper, they taxed.
That sucks. Wow.
That's horrible, right? How it worked. The tax collectors collect the money from the colonists. The money would then go back. Part of the money went to Parliament, which was their governing body, and the other money went to the king. Okay, views of the Stamp Act. Whose views okay, the views of the Stamp Act, whose views do you think we're looking at? Tony? The points of view. Serenity.
Colonists,
And who else?
the British,
What were their names we talked about earlier? Angelina.
the Loyalists,
And who else, Anthony? Neutralists, and Nick, who else?
The loyalists.
And who else?
Patriots.
Patriots, okay? We've got three different groups of people that we want to look at. The British and the Loyalists. The British citizens have been paying taxes on everything. The colonists are taxed the least. So why shouldn't they pay off the debt of the French and Indian War? Okay? You know? Why? The British said they should pay off. The Patriots, well, remember, you've heard this probably in elementary school. No taxation without representation, right? Does anybody know what that means? When I was your age, I heard it in social studies class, and I was like, what does that mean? But I wasn't bright enough to ask, because I was like, no taxation, what does that mean? What does that mean? What that means is, okay, we pay taxes now, right? You guys don't, but I do, your moms, your dads, your grandpas, your uncles. We all pay taxes, correct? We vote, and we have people that we put in office, legislators, right? We have lawmakers that sit in Phoenix, and we have lawmakers that sit in Washington, D.C. that are supposed to represent our interests, right? They're supposed to do good things with our money and good things when it comes to making laws and protecting us, correct? Yes or no?
Yes.
Well, the colonists felt they were paying taxes, but Parliament did nothing to help them to make decisions to run the colonies and do what they needed to do, all right? Parliament just worried about England, okay? They worried about England, and all they worried about was, long as natural resources continue to get on a boat in North America and head back to England to be manufactured into manufactured goods, okay? So everyone say, no taxation without representation.
No taxation without representation.
Together, louder.
No taxation without representation.
Together, louder.
No taxation without representation.
Very good. So Parliament had no right to pass a tax unless the colonists had a voice in Parliament. So what that means is an elected official from the colony should have been in Parliament, sitting in Parliament to say, hear ye, know ye, blah, 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 representing the colonists, okay? Kind of like we have folks that we vote for here, and then when Congress is in session, they're in D.C. dealing with our districts. Do you understand that? I'm sorry, I don't know how many congressional districts we have in Arizona. I can get that information. I believe we have 4, but I'm not certain. So what happened? Okay? The colonists protested. The Sons of Liberty, they were established by Sam Adams, and they were violent. Okay? They were probably what I would consider the Antifa of the late 1700s, right? They were against the government, okay? They went out and did acts against the government to protest, to show that they did not agree. However, it worked because the Stamp Act was repealed, but then the Quartering Act was issued. Zeke, what's the Quartering Act? You talked about it earlier. You talked about it earlier. You brought it up.
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, is that the thing where they had to sleep in their houses?
Yes.
And all their food?
So the Stamp Act got repealed. Have you ever heard out of the frying pan into the fire?
No.
You never heard the term, jump out of the frying pan into the fire? So something's happening, and you have to make a decision to make your life better. Okay, something bad's going on. Okay? And you decide to make a decision, so you walk up and mom and dad, you say, well, you know, this is going on, so what I think is I'm going to do this. And they go, well, I think you're jumping out of the frying pan into the fire. So you think you're doing something better, but it's making your situation worse. Well, the Stamp Act got repealed because of the acts of the Sons of Liberty, so the Crown imposed the Quartering Act. And that means the colonists needed to provide food, shelter, and supplies to British soldiers. It was still, when you think about it, if I'm spending money to pay for a tax on paper products, well, I no longer have to do that, but now I have to spend money on food, shelter, and supplies for British troops. I'm still spending money, right? Money that is not producing a quality benefit for me, right? What do you think, Maggie? Do you think that's fair?
Well, it's
better than having to pay for every single piece of paper that you use, but then again, you're caring for another person and already doing that was money. So
Huh. So what you're proposing is, what I hear, is what we call the cost reward analysis. You have a course of action, what is the cost and what is the reward? What's the payoff, right? So you don't, it depends on how much the tax is and then how much you're actually going to spend. But either way, I believe the colonists felt any money put towards the crown was more than they wanted to spend, right, Serenity? So, you've got the Quartering Act. Here's another act. Okay? Here's another act. We had the Stamp Act, which was repealed, right?
Mhm.
The Crown imposes the Townsend Act. Or no. Stamp Act, Quartering Act, now the Townsend Act. Okay, I want you to know what this act did and why it was a conflict, okay? Pretty much every act causes conflict, right? But I want you to know why it upset them, right? So the Townsend Act, Parliament passed a duty on certain goods the colonies imported from Britain to pay British debts. These goods included glass, paper, lead, ink, and tea. Alright, so with the Townsend Acts, because remember, our resources from the colonies, our resources went back to England to be turned into manufactured goods, okay? So things that we wanted shipped from England into the colonies, they put a tax on it, okay? Think about what's going on right now with President Trump. Have any of you heard him talk about NAFTA? Okay, NAFTA is the North American Free Trade Agreement. That means we can trade between Mexico, Canada, and the United States with a reduced taxes. However, what's happening is manufacturers are sending their workers outside the country to work at a cheaper labor rate, and then it comes in and they make the American dollar for it, okay? Same thing. It's the same thing. They were paying a high tax to bring goods into the colonies because the crown wanted to get their money, okay? So they could pay off this war debt. You got flatware, glassware, tea and cups, documents, stemware, silver. Alright? So the Townsend Act was just duty paid on certain goods. Yeah, I said duty. What's up, T?
Did the colonists know that they were trying to get them to waste their money for the debt of the word?
Well, let's not use the word waste, okay? They weren't trying to get them, but the colonies were aware, very much aware of this. Okay? Because the Crown and Parliament imposed this, and this is one more thing. So, how many acts did we talk about? What was the first one?
Wait, back
Stamp Act.
Stamp Act. Then what happened?
the Parliament.
No, the Quartering Act.
The Quartering Act. The town. All of these things, these are all royal decrees. Okay, they all come out from the Crown and also Parliament saying you're going to pay this. And if you're going to the store and say you're going to the sundry store and you're buying dry goods for your family, like flour, whatever, or something, and yesterday it was like $1, and today it's $1.50, you're gonna ask, what happened? Okay? Just like if I go get gas or I get diesel in my truck, and I know I'm paying like $2.45 to $2.65 a gallon, and I go tomorrow to Maverick and it's $3.15, I'm probably going to ask them, what the heck happened? Why did the fuel go up so much? Alright, so we'll continue this tomorrow, guys. Have a great day. We'll get on to this and we'll work on the I can statements, okay? Thank you very much. That's for Marisol. Yeah, I'm going to upload it on the website.
Did anyone hear what she just said?
Oh, Maya, okay. Bye, Mr. Hall.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day. You're really good today.
Hey, what did the
Even
sub
you,
say?
Mariah. I'll upload this on the website, alright, if you want to read ahead. Because I know you guys love to do that.